Today I want to talk to you about risk management. You know, when you meet someone that's just a risk taker, you know, no matter how you cut it, slice it or dice it, they're ballsy, they take risks, they don't care about the consequences, they just love it for the thrill of the game. You know, they just take a bunch of risks. I'm going to tell you a little story about how I learned about risk management and, you know, just how everyone's different, essentially, is the aim of this video, and what maybe you can do to improve your risk management and have a higher risk management tolerance, potentially. Now, when I worked at a company called EmploySure many years ago, I was working as a telesales role. I cold called a lot of people and made a lot of discovery calls on warm calls as well, so inbound, and I was doing a lot of outbound as well. Essentially, I was a appointment setter for a big company that did B2B sales. We sold a service that essentially helped all of our clients become watertight with policies, procedures, contracts, agreements in their company, so they could have no personal grievances filed against them successfully when it comes to their employees or contractors. And for when they do work for their clients couldn't be unhappy with the work. All the work was set in stone, very clear, very concise. Makes sense. Cool. Now, my job was an appointment setter. I set appointments with business development managers. Again, I was a business sales consultant. My commission was 1%. The business development manager's commission was 5%. So I was just essentially on minimum wage. You get paid for how much you deliver to the business in terms of new revenue. Of course, the more appointments you book, the higher chance you get of closing more deals and getting your 1% commission on every deal. Cool. Now you know who I was and what I was doing. Now, I was working with a guy there, really cool guy. His name was Steve. Now, he was older. I was about 20, 21, 22 at the time when I was working this job. And Steve was a lot older. He was 35, and in the years I knew him, I think he turned 36 and 37. Bit older than me. Cool. Now, I found out that Steve was into crypto. I'm into crypto as well. At the time, I was even more involved in crypto. I've cashed out a little bit nowadays, but I found out Steve was into crypto. We had a great relationship about crypto. He had a lot of Bitcoin. Turns out he was already a millionaire from Bitcoin. He put in money into Bitcoin years and years and years ago. He had £50,000 saved up, moved over to New Zealand, started his new life, spent a bit on Bitcoin, dollar cost average in every week, and before you knew it, he was a millionaire. He cashed out at the height of the market, which was, I think, $57,000 at this time, 2021, and he had a Porsche, he had a Rolex, but he was still working his full-time job as a business sales consultant. Okay, cool. Now, I said to Steve, I was like, Steve, you're a millionaire. You got a gold Rolex, you got a Porsche, you live by yourself? Yep, I live by myself. Okay, cool. I got a question. Do you not want to start your own business and potentially make a lot more money? Or are you happy investing into cryptocurrency? Just again and again and again, you know, buy during the bear market and sell during the bull. And he said, you know what? I've thought about it. You know, when it comes to hiring team members for a company, when it comes to managing a company, when it comes to essentially being an entrepreneur, finding new clients, starting from the ground up, it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of risk, and there's not a guaranteed reward at the end of it. You know, if I'm just another entrepreneur out there, you could fail. Any business can fail out there. With crypto, at least I know that, you know, although it's risky, I know that Bitcoin's the future. I have a lot more faith in Bitcoin than I do my own entrepreneurial ability. And I was like, you know what, fair enough. So you'd never open your own firm, your own, you know, company in this industry, even though you're really good at what you do, you're a great salesman? He said, nope, I'm more than happy with getting my money, getting my paycheck every 2 weeks or every month, even though it was a pretty nice paycheck. You know, at the time, I think he was on a salary of about 70,000 a year, New Zealand dollars, that is, which is not ideal. But he had a bit of a better commission partnership. I think he was a partner with the company in terms of his role, and I think he had a 2.5 or 3% commission per deal, and he was taking only inbound calls. So every day he'd book 5-6 new meetings. Essentially every day deals were coming in like that. Pretty sure by the end of the year he was raking in about 200,000 New Zealand dollars. Great money. That's still really good money. Now, I went home and I was like, okay, If Steve, who's already a millionaire, is saying he doesn't want to take the risk of entrepreneurship because essentially it is too risky and he doesn't know what the outcome will be and he's happy and comfortable doing what he's doing, then maybe I should do the same. You know, I got quite a lot on Bitcoin. I got quite a lot invested in crypto. I'm way younger than him. I got way more time to catch up and, you know, stay at a sales job and make a bunch of money month to month, quarter to quarter, year to year at a sales job. But is that what I want to do? You know, like, let me look at myself in the mirror and ask myself, do I want to be an employee? You know, am I happy with essentially settling for never taking the risk of entrepreneurship? And I always knew I wanted to do something in entrepreneurship. And I sat and I talked to myself and I was like, you know what? Totally understand where Steve's coming from. But I disagree. And that's totally fine. That was one of the first moments in my professional career where I realized it's okay to not think the same and not have the same beliefs as other people. And you know what? That's totally fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Just because Steve's happy, you know, getting his, you know, $200,000, $250,000 a year, investing all that into crypto, already being a millionaire, living a comfortable life, living, you know, a humble life, if you want to call it that, and I'm not, that's not a bad thing. That just means we're different. And guess what? I'm different to you. You're different to me. There's things that I like that you don't like, and there's things that you do like that I don't like. Everyone's different. In professional life and personal life, everyone's different. So I pretty much had to go online, and this was the start of my entrepreneurial journey. And I was just like, why do some people never start a business? Because, you know, the logical thing is, all right, I get a bit of skills here. I'm good at this industry. I'm good at selling to people in this industry. Let me, you know, save up a little bit of money and then eventually start my own company and essentially not steal, but take the customers that I've got at this company and get them to use my service at my company, which is going to be better because it's going to be, whether it's cheaper, faster, more efficient, an extra service on top, whatever, you know, entrepreneurship, business 101. That's the natural progression of business, is what I thought. And it turns out the main thing from the research that I've been doing that holds people back is risk management. You know, risk. Some people just aren't okay to take that risk. And it is a big risk, you know. There's no guarantee at the end of entrepreneurship that you're going to be that 1 in 1,000 or 1 in a million that actually succeeds, that becomes a millionaire, that becomes a billionaire, that makes a bunch of jobs for a bunch of people, helps a bunch of clients, has a massive market share, really changes the world, and fulfills yourself, fulfills your family, whatever you want to achieve. The chances of that happening are really, really slim. That is what it is. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. It is what it is. We're just talking stats here. I don't know the stats off by heart, but I know that a lot of entrepreneurs don't make it. I think the stats are along the lines of every business, 1 in every 10 businesses doesn't make it past the first year. And I think after that, another 1 in every 20 businesses makes it past the second year. And then after 5 years, essentially like 0.5% of all businesses don't make it there. Very interesting. Okay, so the odds are never in our favor. But I was thinking about risk management, and then like the question is, what is risk? You know, what is risk, and why are some people just so unwilling to take it? We like stability as humans. You know, if you, every night when you came home, you didn't have a clean house to come back to, you didn't have food in the fridge, you didn't have a roof over your head and a bed to sleep in, understandably, you're going to feel a bit stressed. And the world we're living in, you have to pay bills to make sure that those things happen. You have to pay for the food, you have to pay for the roof over your head, you have to pay for a clean bed, you have to pay for a bed. You know what I'm getting at. So you weigh up the options, okay? What's the potential return? What am I willing to lose? How much time am I willing to sacrifice into this? And, you know, best case scenario, worst case scenario. That's what I did. And that's why I ended up leaving that sales job, quitting, and beginning entrepreneurship. That's exactly what I did. Even though I sell a little bit of a different product now, I don't sell contracts and legalities and policies and procedures and agreements. in-house for businesses, but I sell an advertising service, right? I package it a lot differently than just an advertising service, but I sell to the same target market, but just with a different issue they're facing. A lot more of a hands-on issue. You know, getting new business in the door is probably more of a concern for especially a smaller business than making sure all their contracts and policies are on point, right? Common sense. Again, risk management. I'm thinking about risk management and I think, so why do some people not take the risk? And it's simple. It's the odds aren't in their favor, and it's they're not comfortable with potentially wasting the time on the said thing, wasting the money on the said thing, and essentially wasting their resources on the said thing. You know, they don't want to embarrass themselves, they don't want to look like an idiot, they don't want to be a failure. All totally understandable, especially if you're very comfortable with the life you're living right now, and especially if you don't want to change. You know, if you don't want to change, don't change. This video should not convince you to change at all. This is for the people that are comfortable with taking a risk, but they maybe just don't know where to start. That's where I was. I knew I had to take a risk at some point. I just didn't know how to do it. And I say this because the goal for someone like you should be to learn what are the risks. You know, again, worst case scenario, best case scenario, and what are you willing to sacrifice? Now, there's risks in everything in life, absolutely everything. An example I was thinking of when I first was asking myself about these risk questions is like any professional career. Take a boxer or an MMA fighter, for example. Every punch they throw, every kick they throw, every submission they go for, every takedown they go for is a massive risk. Everything they do. You know, Floyd Mayweather throwing a punch, leaves them open to be countered, okay? Manny Pacquiao throwing a 10-punch combination leaves him open to be countered. Khabib going in for a takedown leaves him open to be kneed in the face or uppercutted and knocked the fuck out. The reason these guys are comfortable taking these risks is because of preparation and practice. That's the main key, preparation and practice. Now, even though entrepreneurship is, you know, super scary, can be horrifying, can be very confusing, risk management is the most important thing, because it's not just you jumping into the marketplace as a headless chicken and not knowing what the future holds. You can do market research. You can make sure your sales scripts, your sales training for your team members is on point. You can make sure all the legalities are in place in terms of hiring, and if you need to, quickly firing team members. You can improve all these things. That's the blessing about entrepreneurship. It's all skill-based. You know, you have the ability to improve your skills. You do. You are in control of that. So the same way it's risky for Jeff Bezos to start Amazon, with the right market research, with the right preparation in place, with the right planning, and with the right resources in place in terms of how much he could spend and for how long, and you know, it's possible. And you're only going to get anywhere in life through a risk. You know, it's a risk to, you know, if we go to the other side of things, employment side of things, it's a risk to go to college and go to university, right? It's a risk. You're spending a bunch of money, tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes even hundreds of thousands of dollars, on an education that you might not even use. What's the stat? So many of these people that go to university don't even use the college degree or university degree that they earned. You know, their job doesn't require it. They work in something else. Totally fine. That's a risk. Everything's a risk is what I'm getting at. Now, the moral of this story is if you're comfortable with taking that risk, in entrepreneurship, you have to make sure you've done the research. You have to make sure that this risk is as much in your favor as you can make it, okay? You're about to take a massive jump. Your life's going to change drastically. You have to make sure the odds are stacked in your favor, because if they're not, you're going to end up a statistic like every other entrepreneur that starts thinking they got $1 billion idea and fails miserably. Now, if you don't really care and you just want to be like that person, be my guest. I'm not stopping you. But if you really want to make a change in the market, have great clients, have great team members, build a system around you that you're very proud of, you gotta do market research. And guess what? You're gonna have to take the risk. No one's gonna come to you at your job one day and offer you an entrepreneurial role, okay? Unless you're co-founding with someone and maybe you're the second in charge, which is cool as well. But at the end of the day, you're gonna have to go out there, grab life by the balls, grab your career by the balls, and at some point, take a leap of faith. Now, if you're comfortable doing that, beautiful. You might want to subscribe to this channel, leave a comment down below as to where you're at and all that good stuff. But if you don't, guess what? You can click off this video, give it a dislike if you don't like it, and you never have to watch me again. Anyway, appreciate you guys for watching this. Hope that was a bit of an insight as to me, maybe my story, and how I essentially learned about risk management. That was my first time learning about risk management, and believe me, from then, I've asked a million different people about risk management, and I've got a million different types of answers. And guess what? Going back to what I said at the beginning, everyone is different. Your answer and your risk tolerance is not going to be the same as the next person's, as it should be, right? Everyone's different. And again, going back to risk tolerance, there's risk in everything. Your girlfriend, who you choose as a girlfriend, that has a risk to it. Who you choose as your wife, that has a risk to it. Who you choose as the mother of your children, that has a risk to it. Who you choose as your friends, that has a risk to it. And even if you're not an entrepreneur, what company you work at has a massive risk to it. Okay, you're going to be spending more time in this company, with these people than you are with your own family. 8, 9, 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, maybe even 6 days a week. So decide what you want, decide what you're comfortable losing, decide what you're comfortable with potentially gaining, and you make the decision for yourself what the future holds for you. Follow my Instagram at HarperMazy, link in the description. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you fellas for another video very shortly. Bye-bye.